Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have another really cool Seiko for you that's relatively new and definitely relatively affordable as well. Now, a little bit about the brand. Seiko was founded back in 1881. They are, of course, Japanese in origin and now have factories throughout Asia. They actually cover all market segments, all the way down from the most entry-level watches to some pretty extremely high-end pieces, even if they don't bear the name Seiko very clearly, such as watches and kind of their Creedor line. This particular type of watch is, of course, a dive watch. Some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for a dive watch. You're, of course, going to be looking for something that is going to be water resistant, normally with some type of screw down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel and a diver's extension if on bracelet. Now, this particular model is the SNE497, or the latest Prospex Solar Tuna, and these have kind of affectionately been given the nickname of the Tuna-Lite, which I think is very fitting because they are not only a light version of a tuna, but also light powered. So this particular iteration definitely pays a direct homage to the SBBN015. So I think it's a great spiritual successor to that very classicized tuna style with the indices, with the handset. So really happy to see this finally come out, and of course it's on bracelet. And the nice thing is that these bracelets, since they are straight end links, will be relatively easy to swap out as well if you want to upgrade it. But with that said, let's go ahead and get a closer look right now. Okay. So as you can see, this model is definitely all tuna. It has the DNA, and the nice thing is I feel like they actually kind of went back to some really classic styling cues versus, I would say, continuing to evolve what the current tunas look like. So I think this was a real true return to form for them. Loving the handset, definitely very reminiscent. Of course, the dial layout and everything, even more symmetrical with a bit more of a modern placement of the date there. But this piece is just really, really nice. Very quickly, the specs, of course, the width here across is going to be 46.7 millimeters in diameter. It's very nice and very relatively thin, I'd say. Height of really only being 12 millimeters thick. It has a very nice short compact lug to lug, as you can see there, at just 45.8. So it's actually, I feel like the lugs themselves are actually shorter than the kind of the widest points of the shroud at times, which is I mean, you can see there that the bracelet sticks out a bit there, but the lugs themselves are definitely quite short and help this, and on really all tunas and kind of that style of model really wear so nicely. This one actually has a nice stainless steel case. It has a resin shroud, which also is swappable, which is nice. So just to give you a little heads up, although I really love this watch, I actually purchased it to do some light mods to it by switching out the bracelet and clasp, and then also the shroud to a metal shroud. So this one is going to receive some upgrades to really look a bit more like that SBBN015, but I was very surprised to just really be taken away by how nice this thing looks in stock trim, and it just wears fantastic as well. So this thing feels really good, and the nice thing is you can get these for 350 bucks. I picked mine up from passthewatch.com, so a little shout out to them. You'll see a link down in the description. Really great to deal with, shipped really quick. And, I've seen these posted relatively high here and there. And then, of course, this model is a bit more expensive because it does come on bracelet. You can also get them, just on the strap in a couple of different looks. You can get it in the kind of golden tuna form, or you can also get it in the patty, tuna style with the wave dial and then the Pepsi bezel, which I think is definitely really nice. And I think it actually has even a blue resin tuna shield there. So Of course, if you aren't familiar with the Tuna line of watches from Seiko, they got the name because they look like a tuna can. Little short, fat thing, and of course, from the sea. So I think these are really great, and they're some of the largest watches you can wear comfortably, really, because of that design and just, Seiko, they are just notorious for finding tricks and new ways to make these watches work extremely well. Now, the crystal is a hard Lex, which I do not have a problem with at all, especially since it's flat and relatively inset. It's not like it's gonna, be raised with any type of chamfer or anything like that. So it's actually gonna be pretty tough for this to get scratched anyway. And honestly, as I've reported in many of my videos with stock Seiko Hardlex crystals, I actually don't think I've ever even had a scratch show up on one. But I do have a ton of watches, so I treat them pretty well when they go into rotation. I mean, they might get worn once a week if they're one of my very favorite watches. So that's also something to think about. So, I mean, if you're going to be out on a construction site with this, you might be able to ding it up pretty good. But for me, Hardlex definitely has done the job in the past. The bezel is 120 clicks unidirectional. So let's go ahead and take a listen. Very nice. So you can see there's a little bit of back play. The nice thing is with that back play, you can actually line it up pretty much perfectly. So that's the only time I don't mind a little bit of back play. It definitely has more of a, I'd say, a hollow feeling, but that's something that just comes with Seiko watches. And then I would expect that definitely from this particular piece because of the resin shroud and then also the quartz movement. So there's not going to be a lot of meat inside of here that's going to make this feel super solid or anything, but it definitely does the job. And as you can see, even with these gloves on, I was able to grip really nice, and it was very satisfying. 120 click bezel. And then the nice thing is they actually have the index loomed that goes all the way to the 15-minute marker, which is great. So from 12 to 15, that will glow, and you will see that in the loom shots and the light transition portion. The crown itself is probably the only oddball item on here because it is actually kind of a satin blasted finish, which you don't really see any other blasted finishes anywhere on this watch. I mean, of course, this is matte, so maybe that was the reasoning there for that. They wanted it to kind of have a similar aesthetic to the resin shroud, and then also the resin insert here, and then that matte black dial. I'm not quite sure. I think it would have looked better in some type of brushed finish, but for the price, you really can't complain too bad. But yeah, I thought that was kind of the only really odd choice. Everything else, I think aesthetically lines up really, really great. Now the movement inside this, you won't be able to see it, but is the solar powered V157, and you can see this nice stamped and etched case back there. Gives you a couple of details. You have the great Seiko tsunami wave as well, and then you do have the folding clasp with this kind of add-on here. Hopefully I can get this with the gloves. There you go, a little diver's extension. So that pops out, and basically you can still close it and wear it now, and you have a little extension there, so you can put it over your wetsuit if you so desire. And then you put it back, really nice and easy, even with the gloves on. So pretty impressed by that. A little bit about this movement. When it is fully basically when it's a full charge, this thing will last 10 months. So this is basically a year almost. You can have this thing off your wrist and it's going to be fine as long as you had a full charge on it for 10 months. So I mean, this is perfect. And then because of the accuracy at just plus or minus 15 seconds a month, that's really spot on and very impressive. Of course, the dial, everything is, this nice matte black. As you can see, it does have painted indices, but the Lume is very nicely applied. It gives it kind of a 3D texture to it there, which is really nice. The hands are, of course, this really nice satin brush on there, which ties in. And, you know, I think it would have been a bit of a standout if it was a little bit blingy, had the polish. So I think that was definitely a nice touch. And also, you know, an extra step in finishing. So that's to be appreciated. This is, of course, 200 meters water resistant. It has 22 millimeter lugs with drilled lugs at that, so which is really great. The bracelet does taper down to 20 millimeters, and it is connected by a pin and collar system, so that can kind of be a pain, but you know what, the nice thing is you're pretty much never going to destroy your links. If anything, you'll only need a new pin and collar here and there if something bad happens. So with that said, let's go ahead and get this piece on the wrist. Okay, as you can see, this thing wears really nice on my 7¼ inch wrist. Really surprisingly flat. I mean, look at that profile. Really great. And then of course, because of the really short lugs, this thing just wears super well. Very flexible. I do wear my watches a little bit looser, and of course on my right hand because I write with my left hand. So when I wear my watch here, as you can see, it's a little bit lower on the wrist, so comfort as far as, you know, some of the ergonomics and the way the case shape is and the bracelet and whatnot is very important to me because I wear it lower on the bone, so I do have to worry about things digging into my wrist. Luckily, I am, you know, a lefty, so I don't have to worry about the crown digging in necessarily, but I do have to worry about kind of the way the undercase is shaped and everything. And this definitely offers great range of motion, feels really wonderful, you know, and I think it looks really great on wrist. Very classic. I'm really looking forward to switching out this shroud, although I think the black shroud is kind of growing on me. I actually enjoy the aesthetic, and I think if this was on a strap, it would definitely help kind of complete the look. Quick comparison, another solar tuna here is the Tuna that I've reviewed on the channel. This is actually quite a bit bigger, but as you can see, here you have the resin case, and then I do have this aftermarket deep blue all resin bracelet. So this thing is super light, but you know, this was kind of a G-Shock competitor here for me. And then here, I guess this would be like an analog G-Shock competitor in this solar tuna, which is great. The really nice thing about these solar powered watches is you don't have to worry about swapping out batteries. And that's one of the reasons why I love mechanical watches so much, is I don't like worrying about batteries. So to be able to still have another option by having it be solar powered and relatively accurate. I mean, of course, compared to mechanical movements, very accurate, but you know, there's just higher accuracy quartz movements that are out there. Let's go ahead and take, as you can see, the profile much larger here on the Digi. This thing is great though. I mean, totally my knock around watch. I can wear anywhere and not really worry about it. And you can see they're being very, you know, in sync as far as the timing goes there, the seconds ticking away very accurately. Actually, this is less accurate, which I found to be pretty funny. I think this one plus or minus 20 seconds, and then we have plus or minus 15 a month. So I thought that was really an odd thing, but I guess this bad boy here ticking away keeps better time than this one does. So that's really cool. I thought so I would share that with you guys. With that said, let's go ahead, get this piece off now, and actually give you guys an idea of what this looks like in the dark under Lume conditions and some low light transition. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights. Now, as you can see, this thing really glows. It is, of course, a Seiko diver. That Seiko Lume Bright is absolutely outstanding. I really do enjoy that lumed bezel index there that goes to the 15-minute marker. I think it would have been great also to kind of do the whole bezel, but I think it actually shows just, I guess, a level of precision and tooling when you look at it from that 15-minute point, is that they did that purposefully. And, you know, I guess technically it's more of a design choice than it would be if they would have just loomed the whole thing all the way through. So I think that's really cool. You know, in the dark, it looks almost like there's a little cutout there. So it does help you focus on the very important 15-minute marks. So with that said, as you guys can see, this Lume is just outstanding. But you know what? Let's go ahead, if I can, in the dark here, find the switch to my little, here you go, my little low light transition. As you guys can see here, my hot studio lights do a very good job of imitating direct sunlight, but let's face it, you're not always going to be out in an open park or something like that. You're actually going to spend a decent amount of your time with your watch, coming in and outdoors, in and out of vehicles and whatnot. So it's nice to kind of get a look at how this will look in less than optimal lighting conditions. And you can actually see the way the light plays off the brushing there. So very fine brushing, not the most uniform or anything like that, but I think Seiko, one of the things that they do really well is the finishing. Of course, for the lower end models, the fitment isn't always quite as good, but the finishing itself is actually pretty nice. And the nice thing with this very fine brushing is it gives the metal a very nice kind of warmer glow to it, which almost makes it appear darker in some lights, and then a little bit catching the light better and getting brighter. So really nice. And as you can see, the Lume looks fantastic still. When I bring the light out, bring it back on site here, and go ahead and hit the main lights. So while that is readjusting there, and you guys can kind of take a look, I'll go ahead and jump into my closing thoughts. Now, on the wrist, this thing wears surprisingly thin. It is extremely compact with that short lug to lug, which is great. It's kind of everything you would expect from a, you know, a tuna that isn't ginormous. At being just under 47 millimeters. I know that sounds very large, but when you think about it with the lug to lug and whatnot, this thing actually wears pretty much like a dream. Now, as far as model variants go, of course, like I mentioned, there is that kind of golden Tuna-Lite, and then you have that Patty Pepsi kind of trim with the special wave pattern dial. And then the wave pattern dial is a little bit different than what you've seen because it is a solar dial, so they can't really add too much 3D texturing there. It's more of a 2D print, so that's definitely interesting, and it's probably the most affordable patty that there's ever been, because you can get them under 200 bucks, so that's pretty crazy. Of course, this is going to come on strap versus on bracelet, but the nice thing is because of this particular style of watch, you can easily put it on a straight end link bracelet, and the shroud covers it up, so it actually looks quite nice. So you can easily dress those up with a nice option, and you guys will see that I will be dressing this bad boy up with a nice strap coat option, so I'm looking forward to that. As far as, you know, comparable models go, like I mentioned before, analog G-Shocks would probably be very closely comparable. And then really, I'd say the closest comparable would be, you know, Citizen's Echo Drive ProMaster line. They even have some that look very similar to the Tuna, just minus the shroud. And those are great looking watches, and they're also very affordable and very available. And they're fine watches. I've been on the fence. I've almost bought them so many times. But I guess I prefer the aesthetic generally of Seiko better over Citizen. But as far as build quality goes, Citizen is definitely on par, if not better, most of the time. And whenever you're comparing similar price points, so if that's a big deal to you, definitely check out the ProMaster line. They have some great options, even available, super readily available on Amazon. And you know, you're not going to be able to fit a straight end link without seeing a gap on it because there are no shrouds on those Citizens. But the watches are absolutely, you know, functionally on par. They do all the same things, and they do them very, very well. So those are definitely really nice, and the Lume is actually pretty outstanding as well. Now, I'd say probably the bottom line is this thing is the clear spiritual successor to what I consider the classic SBBN015 tuna, which is kind of when they were still known as Marinemaster tunas. Of course, with 300 meters of water resistance and whatnot, and a higher accuracy quartz movement. But one of the things that you had to worry about is switching out a battery every once in a while. And I do crack the occasional case back open, but I'm not a huge fan of worrying about batteries. So to have this here with a 10-month power reserve is just absolutely outstanding. It's just one of these great watches that are out there, and then it's super affordable, and it really just does everything that you need it to. And then with this aesthetic now, I think it looks outstanding. And as you guys saw, when it glows, it actually had a more symmetrical case. More symmetrical layout as far as the dial went, with now that it doesn't have a day and date right there, and the day's kind of been pushed off. Of course, now you're missing that marker, but you can't have them all, can't win them all. But I think this thing is just absolutely outstanding and does not get enough love. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.